So I'm glad we had time to get together and chat here in the palatial studios in in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And so spending some time with you is always good. But this time we get a chance to talk a little bit about leadership, organizational leadership, some of the wonders of it, and perhaps some of the challenges there. And so the first question I had that I wanted to throw out to you is around how leaders lead in the case of disruption. How they struggle through, they push through, but the best of the leaders, the great leaders, the elite leaders are able to do it in such a way that it brings their teams together, regardless as to what the disruption may be. And of course, we all may try to be perfect, but it doesn't always work in the best kinds of ways. So, for example, one disruption could be bringing in a new CEO. You've had some experience with that. Bring in new local leaders. You've had some experience with that. Or mergers and acquisitions that you've had some experience with. So I'll start just with, what do you think about that as a context for the idea of when those things happen, leadership can help to bring people together?
Mm-hmm. I think it's a great question, and it's great to be here with you. So thank you for doing this. We, I think, have no shortage. There's no shortage of disruptions. So pick one if you want to pick the pandemic or the aftermath of the pandemic or what's going on today that feels almost pandemic-like at times because of the uncertainty. It's almost comical that we're actually talking about the certainty that existed through the pandemic, but there was.
Yes.
As crazy as that is, I'm not glorifying it, but there was certainty in it and that everybody's going through the same thing. And right now, with what's happening, it's incredibly difficult. So I would say that today, leading is about, there's no normal. Leading is about leading in times of almost continuous disruption in one form or another. And you can see it all throughout the industry. You can see it in restaurants and retail and other industries. But in restaurants right now, as I read and look at what happens every day, there's a new story of either someone succeeding or someone not, or some company succeeding and one not, almost equally daily, and how people are really trying to grapple with and deal with all of the noise, right? So yes, I've come in to an organization. I came into an organization as a CEO at the tail end of what everyone thought would be the tail end of the pandemic, and it wasn't. We're still knee deep in it. And I think you can, with something like that, because there was a common, and I think this would be the answer, you find what's common, you find the common ground, and you find what people need to be pulled together and that will unite them, right? And in the case of the pandemic, what very clearly became what pulled everybody together was this idea of survival, not only survival as a company, but keeping everyone safe.
Yes.
First and foremost, keeping everyone safe. So you just do a Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It became very clear. What was on the bottom was what mattered. Food, safety, security, health, and protecting people that way. And so that, again, not to glorify it, but that became what was common. And I think no matter what the assignment or what the disruption, look for what's common in everybody. Is it what's the common need? What's the common emotion? Is it we are calming people in completely uncertain times? Is it fear? So how do you overcome what's most probably happening for most everybody? And then bring people together under that unity. The other thing I think I did learn leading during the pandemic was, and as a result now, people want a leader who will create safe spaces for them to say what they're worried about. And when you can put a name to that, or you can understand that for an individual, you're probably understanding it. For anyone one person willing to tell you, there's probably 10 more thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
And so you can use that to bridge this, what's really kind of going on under the surface, and get to what would bring everybody together in that moment. Mergers, the acquisition.
But just before you move on to the
Sure.
mergers, it sounds like you talk about the pandemic almost like it was this forced executive MBA in leadership, right? That when you look backwards, you had 3, 4, 5 years of ups and downs and had to learn and find the common ground. If there wasn't a common ground, we're going to have to identify it, we're going to have to name it, and then we can align to it and push forward. I mean, as you're talking, I'm feeling like it's a bit maybe too objective, a bit too rational, because there's so many terrible things that happened there, but there was a ton of learning that happened for leaders. And some leaders didn't quite, cross all the T's or dot all the I's, and they found that they had significant gaps.
I think if you didn't have it to begin with, or your culture didn't have it in them to begin with, then it was hard to figure out in the moment how to do the right thing, or people did what was natural in their organizations, the great cultures. And at that point, one part of the pandemic, I was with Black Box Intelligence, so I was coaching other CEOs, working with other CEOs, and educating them on what I could see through the data. And what I watched play out was the really strong cultures, the really strong CEOs, the people first CEOs led that same way, and they led with their hearts, and yet were maniacally focused on getting to the other side. So you can't do it if it's not there to begin with. Those great companies were the ones that said, well, I may have to furlough my employees, but they're all going to have a meal here every day if they want. Their families can come in. So if the restaurant is open at all, I'll welcome those families in. Not everybody did that, but the really great ones stayed true to who they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And would you say that that those who did well, it was because of who the leader was? It was their core? And or was it the core of the organization's systems and values? Was it 50-50?
I'd say it depends. Depends. But, how much of the organization becomes the shadow of that leader? Yeah. How much was the organization being set up? A great leader will take all the good stuff too, right? If it's not within that leader. So I think, 50-50, or, the great leader comes and joins takes the assignment because they know what they're getting into and they know they've got a great culture. I've always believed you can't go against the grain if it's not a good culture to start with. You may have a lot of permission as a CEO, seemingly permission, but you're just going to work and push a rock uphill if it's not there to begin with.
Understood. So now where we're getting into mergers and acquisitions and how this is also a key disruption that leaders in their best selves, the best of the leaders, have an ability in the midst of that to still drive the team together and make them sticky to one another so they can continue to be successful.
Yeah, I think for us, the example of Kiki's Breakfast Cafe and the acquisition almost 3 years ago, I had just joined, and this was in the works for quite some time. And coming from a portfolio company like I did with Brinker International, it was incredibly important that in bringing new teams together, that we allowed them still to be separate. So the Kiki's Breakfast Cafe team has a unique purpose statement that we didn't try and take the Denny's statement. The Denny's purpose statement of, we say this all the time, we love to feed people body, mind, and soul, came from Harold Butler in 1953 when he started the first Annie's Donuts. And so with Kiki's, they came in and we said, that's probably not going to work because it's not going to be authentic to you. So how do you allow them to still be a part of this big team, create synergies, create one team, and then acknowledge their first team may be those that serve in a Kiki's Breakfast Cafe, and it's not Denny's. So we look for what's common. We have common guiding principles or values, and we crafted those together in light of that acquisition, in light of having a new brand in the portfolio. But it was really critical. Things closest to the guest and closest to the employee had to remain separate, and they had to be able to chart their own path. Or an acquisition, in my opinion, an acquisition could fail if you just try and throw everybody at it, all together, and not really see the differences and uniqueness of each of your, brands at that point. And I think it's a mistake sometimes made of let's just all be driving towards this greater good for the corporation, when we wanted to keep what was unique to Kiki's really unique to Kiki's, and vice versa for Denny's.
So let's take those two pieces as setting the context. New leadership comes in, and that's one kind of disruption. Merger and acquisitions happen, and that's a different kind of disruption. Let me insert a different one, and that is loss. When loss occurs inside of an organization, individual loss, group loss, geographic loss, I believe that leaders can still use these moments to push people together. Right, and such that they can maintain a level of innovation and creativity and productivity, but it comes from their desire or connection to one another. What are your thoughts on that?
Again, I would go back to, I think you know what you're stepping into and know the kind of culture that exists, and whether that is not only welcomed, but that you are seen for your whole self. And when I walked, the story I would tell you is when I walked in here from the previous CEO, John Miller, who I've known my entire life and who I knew, at the age of 24, met him for the first time. Larger than life back then, and an amazing purpose-driven leader. In the closet that's outside my office was a set of gifts uniquely chosen by one local artist that created their angels. There's a candle with a cross. And it is there. It was there and passed on to me for me to give to people when appropriate, when needed. And if there's someone that has had a loss, of any kind, right? Just something dramatic. um, that's I've given those out, and I've reordered and replenished that closet so that it serves that purpose, which was to make sure somebody feels seen, feels like this organization not only has their back, but we know what they're going through, and there's a family and a community here behind them.
Yeah, I have found that a wise person, my elder sister, told me this, that loss is loss. And if somebody loses a spouse, we can't diminish that in relation to somebody else losing a child, in relation to somebody else losing a mother, sure, or somebody losing a pet or a home, or even a divorce, or things like that occur in people's lives. And that because loss is loss, and because we can't say which one is more critical or impactful to another, it then becomes contingent upon the leader to be sensitive to it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that if we can be sensitive to it all, then perhaps we can assign the learnings from it to people who build policy, to ensure that the people are seen, that these needs are surfaced, that loss is surfaced in a way that drives people together.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, all the leaders, that you have to be aligned in that, and sometimes the policy actually will follow the event that you all learn from. And that's really critical as well. So that constant learning of, does this still serve us? Does it still make sense? Is it time to reevaluate that?
Yeah. Like here in your neighborhood, there occurred a hurricane that doesn't normally come this direction, right? And the reaction of that is versions of loss, right? And you don't get to see the gap in the policy until the incident occurs. And we have a client where that occurred, and they realized that because the majority of their team members are frontline team members that make modest incomes, that they didn't have a way of capturing them when they lost, right, in a meaningful way, a way that was meaningful to them.
Sure.
That instead they had only emergency monies for those who were in a destitute situation. They didn't have something for the common man or the common woman.
Sure, absolutely. And so I love this topic, because we did have a real situation here with the hurricane that impacted this area, impacted Spartanburg, and it dramatically impacted a lot of our team members, a lot. And yet they were still trying to get their work done. We still had to power this building that you're in, still had to be powered. We then got the mobile relief diner up and ready to go, geared it up, and then sent it out to the streets to feed anybody we could. And the line of volunteers was endless. We stayed here in Spartanburg for a few days, then went on to Asheville, and then went on to Florida for Milton. And in that 3-week period, the training, my dad actually was able to go in my spot, because we had to be at our conference, our franchise convention in Colorado Springs. So we had to go the opposite direction and be away from it all. My dad took my spot and said it was one of the best days he's ever had.
Wow.
Because when he got there, the training was, today you serve a meal, but you serve a smile and you give hope. And the conversation that you choose to engage, how you choose to engage, will make all the difference. So that's Denny. That's the culture that's existed for a really long time. I just get to spread that and be kind of the chief reminding officer at times of the beautiful things that do happen when there's loss, or the way this brand, this company comes together, because that's what we did. How quickly can we get the mobile relief diner out there? Broke all kinds of records of how many meals we served each day, and how many people were touched, right? That showed up with mud all over everything, because there's no running water days after the storm. And I'd like to think our employees that had needed anything got that first, but then they rallied around the community. It was just a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Let me shift gears to talking about sections of the professional workplace. And in this case, I want to discuss those folks that are sort of in the middle third of their careers, if we were to break them up into thirds. They've been around for 12, 13 years, but not quite 20 years, somewhere in that neighborhood. And one of the themes, perhaps reputations, perhaps experiences of senior people when they look at this group, is that they wish they were more resilient. And they don't quite see grit in the same way that it was taught to them, or that they learned from the baby boomer and traditional groupings. And I wonder if that's something you've heard in conversations, if that's something that's bubbled up, if you happen to be maybe mentoring a person or two that is, and you see some of these, you see, is resilience, should it be seen differently? Is grit, should it be seen differently? Or is that something that this group just didn't get the chance to experience in the ways that others did?
So we're still talking about those millennials now, just a little bit older. Yes.
Yeah.
In this example.
My guess is that these people are they're middle 30-year-olds, right? This group, but they're not quite 45, and they're prepared to just poke into the senior executive levels. They're about ready to be a senior VP, a senior executive vice president. Maybe they're old director, or something like that. And maybe they're wondering why I'm not being seen this particular way. And some of the conversations that I've had are they get knocked down. When I'm talking to them, they get knocked down and they don't get up in the same way. Or they don't get up. And their mindset does not include a button that says, I will get up one more time. They don't have that button.
I think it's interesting because I think I look at every generational difference and love studying it as well. Love being a student of just understanding, the differences and how people arrive depending on, I have two children, they're both Gen Z. It's fascinating to watch how they approach work today, coming out of college, and to watch, the teams we all collectively lead. I tend to still want to look for what's common, right? And so this idea of, do you see me? Do you connect with me? Do you care about me? Right? And I think resilience can come from all of that, but it has to, the investment has to be there. They've got to see an investment that you're making. And I do think that resilience can be taught if they don't feel connected, seen, right? And again, I've seen this through my daughter, who everyone would say, well, that generation, are they really going to care about the same things? Are they going to work as hard? Has it been given to them? It's the same thing. She wants to, and that's not just because she's my daughter. She wants to be seen, be connected. She wants to feel like she's doing well and doing a good job. And then to be, resilience, I think, comes from failing and then still being able to get up. But you've got to actually trust the environment you're in a place where, and know you're in a place where you could say, I didn't do that so well, but I'm here again to learn, right? It's funny because every time if I get asked to do a keynote, it's, don't forget to talk about the mistakes you've made. And I think there lies a bit of your question, right? Can I learn from somebody that's made mistakes, still here to talk about it? So life didn't end because I made a mistake at work. And believe me, I can make really, there are big ones. There are big things I've done that I wish I had done differently. But that's what everybody wants to hear about. They want to hear somebody in my position talk about being resilient, if you will, but they want to hear it and learn from the story of, you made that mistake, and how did you recover from that? What did you learn from it? How did you recover from that? And are you okay?
Yeah, I think that you're right about that. I think about, there's a parenting term that I think might apply in the professional context. It essentially posits that we want our children to learn the lessons that we learned without having to go through what we had to go through in order to learn it.
Yeah.
Right. And we don't want to throw our kids in the deep end with no life raft, nothing, because you got to drown a little bit to understand this, right? Yes. And I wonder if that hasn't played out in the professional context, where we are much more apt to what I call empower without full accountability, right? And then the second component of that is, if I do empower you, and I do hold you fully accountable, did I tie that task, that stretch task, to my KPIs as a senior leader? Did I make it meaningful to me? And you know that if you don't perform well, it's going to impact me, us, we. Right. Or is it just you on your stretch assignment over there in the corner?
Yeah. I think you have to connect it back to the bigger organization, to what is meaningful. We have 4 key results, and for every assignment, there's a, can I show you how this ladders back to one of the 4 key results? So we're all vested in that. Your assignment could be smaller, but is it still tying back to the bigger results that are common for all of us?
If you were going back to give your 35 to 40-year-old self a piece of advice, understanding that nothing about your life is going to change. All the stuff is still going to happen, right? And it can't be a piece of advice that helps you to avoid falling on your face, right? What might you say?
My 35-year-old self. I talked about this recently when asked about surprises or things I would do differently. And I would trust myself more. Imposter syndrome is a real thing that most leaders have. Many don't talk about. And it's not just, geez, I question myself. It's the fear of being found out. Mm-hmm. And just saying it out loud, there's some empowerment that comes from saying that out loud. Like, I'm not, does anybody really understand that none of us really know? And we're doing our best just to surround ourselves with people smarter than us and to do the best we possibly can, right? So I think I would say, trust yourself. It will be okay. And it is okay to make those mistakes, and you deserve to be here, right? So there's like 4 advices in there. 4 pieces of advice in that one thing.
I want to go backwards and grab something that I extricated out from the conversation because of something that you said. You and I met in connection to Women's Food Service Forum in that time frame in our lives. And I still find that conference, those conferences, to be exceptionally meaningful. Mm-hmm. And there are things that happen at women generated conferences like Women's Food Service Forums or what have you that don't happen when they are sort of general conferences. Mm-hmm. And one of those is discussing things like imposter syndrome and the support that comes from the connections that happen in those conversations or workshops. And that doesn't happen in other conferences in the same way. And I think what happens as a result of that is you get a bunch of women who are more adept at collaborating and supporting each other through those kinds of things, and less men who are good at that. And so you have a bunch of men running around who have imposter syndrome, who then find themselves lonely. And so I think there's a higher grade of loneliness in men folk who happen to be professionals than women folk who happen to be professionals, in large part because they're not taught to collaborate in meaningful ways. Right. They're not taught the things that are pillars of the Women's Food Service Forum type of conferences. What's your thinking around that?
My thinking around that is something I actually have talked about for years, which is this idea that women do come by a lot of the characteristics of vulnerability, balance, patience, empathy, collaboration. Like, there's studies done, right? If you put, it was years ago that I read this study, and I've pulled it forward and I still quote it even though it's so dated. But the study was about those natural traits. Those traits more natural to women than men can serve women exponentially, right? Can serve us in such unique and authentic ways. Does not mean men are not capable of it, but it is more natural. It's more natural to lean into that. It's the same reason there's books written on, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and ask a male leader, are you ready for this next assignment? Yes. Hold my coffee, hold my beer.
That's right.
And the woman, again, there's data, says, geez, I don't know, man. I'm still mastering this role, right? So it's forever been the mark of the differences that, men and women naturally have. I think it's the reason the conversations are different, and I think it's the reason that the men that are there are the enlightened, the enlightened folks that are like, this is amazing development because we're talking about something different, and it may feel more authentic, more real. And again, it doesn't mean men can't do it. I'm not sure men are lonelier because of it, because I think equal, like, just different loneliness maybe at a different level, but there is some comfort in being able to have those discussions openly. There's empowerment for me in being able to tell other women that might struggle with, can I show that part of myself? That, it's actually needed more than ever. Back to safe spaces. That's a Brene Brown quote. Create safe spaces for people. So leadership has changed over the years. It used to be Jack Welch and the GE way, and much more tough and competitive or cutthroat, if you will. And I think that's evolved over time to what you have today, which is people need a leader that will nurture, create a path, get results, but also, do some good along the way. Like, shame on you if you're not trying to do some greater good with what you've been given.
Gotcha. So wrapping up, you bring up Jack Welch and others, and I choose to put you in the Jack Welch grouping of great leaders. I choose to, and I think I'm right. So with that as a backdrop, I wonder if you have a thought on this. Why would anybody ever want to be a C-suite leader, particularly in a complex organization? When you look at the landscape of these humans, what about them suggest, yeah, I've got that in my DNA too. There's something in the bones that helps us to become these kinds of people, right?
It's a hard question. It's difficult to pinpoint just one thing. Obviously, I think driven to the point of you can sense in a short, long, doesn't matter how long conversation, you'd be able to sense a drive for results, a drive for kind of winning, hating, losing almost as much as winning, like hating losing, like do not.
Is that
want
different
to
than
lose.
being competitive?
It's similar. It's similar to being competitive,
It's like
but it is a
cousin.
little bit different. Yeah, it's a cousin. Yeah. I also think it's a pull. I think there's a pull for some to just, that leadership is a pull. It's like this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm striving towards something that I'm just supposed to be doing. I wouldn't say calling. Maybe at the highest order, there's a bit of a calling of, I've got to keep doing this, and therein lies that kind of pull and that drive to just keep taking really hard stuff on, right? Knowing exactly what you're up against. Although I would say you'd never know what you're up against until you're in that seat.
But you enjoy that?
Yes.
Is enjoy the right word?
Enjoy may not be the right word, because it's the word, the phrase awesome responsibility.
Yeah.
It's a heavy responsibility because you either care deeply about everybody around you, everybody that's along the journey with you, or you detach yourself. And I don't know a way to do that. So for me, the assignment is all that comes with it, all the franchisees and their livelihood, all the employees and their livelihood, their whole selves, their families that I have the benefit and honor to know. There's a lot that comes with it. That's back to, there's a pull still of wanting to do it and still wanting all that comes with it, all that comes with the responsibility, even when it's hard.
So is that part of what keeps you, allows you, drives you to work that extra hour or 2 or 3? And can you track it backwards a couple of decades? Can you track it backwards to grad school? Can you track it backwards to your first 2 or 3 jobs? It's like, you know what? Y'all go ahead. I'm just going to stay here and read another book or watch another podcast or. Have you been that person for forever?
That curious, yeah.
Driven?
Yes, that driven, yes. Yeah. The conversation this morning I had was about sports and playing sports in literally middle school and high school, and the kind of competitor, the kind of athlete I was. And there was an example of, hey, take me back to, the question I got was, take me back to, is there somebody you remember? And it was literally the physical educate, the phys ed teacher. And there was an example where it was down to me and this one other young woman. We were young. I mean, I'm in middle school. And it was like this version of flag football, hard to even explain. I don't even know what it was called to this day. But we kept tying. We kept tying over and over again. And she was probably the better athlete, and I was good, but she was probably the better athlete, but he would not let us give up. He would not. He was like, we're all going to stay here. The whole class had to stay, and everybody had to wait for one of us to win. The next question was, did you win? I'm like, I don't know. I don't remember if I won or not, but I certainly remember not giving up, and that everybody was waiting on us to finish what you started, and we were exhausted. But that left a big indelible mark on me, as did some of my first experiences in the workplace of, what leadership looks like. And the whole premise of kind of leaving it better than you found it, seeing others, things that I've also often talked about.
So I want to carve out a space of time in case you have a question for me. I'm going to put that over the side. But what you just said, that we had to keep going and we kept tying, and I don't know if I won. What's today's version of that in your life? What's the version of, I got to keep going, going, I don't know if I've won, I maybe keep tying, but I can't stop, won't stop, people keep me on the field, right? I'm not even allowed to get off the field.
Every day I have a scorecard. And it's not the scorecard I want. It's not the scorecard the collective we, everyone here wants to be winning. And there's a stock price every day that is an indicator of, are you finished on that field? No, we're not finished. And it's not no, I'm not happy until it's better. It's better for all those franchisees, all of our employees. There's 100% or more bonus, right? And that's not what that's not what I've been able to do. That goes back to that. That's the responsibility in it that feels, heavy at times. And yet that's what we're here to do.
I thought you might have slipped into being a parent. Like, being a great parent is like a continual journey, regardless as how old your kids are, right?
Yeah.
They can be 5 or 15 or 25, still working hard to be a great parent.
Oh, always.
And you don't get to decide when you're off the field. You don't get to decide if you won or lost. Your kids will say, when you're gone, Mom was a great mom.
Yes,
right?
sure.
You don't get to choose whether or not you got the first place trophy in momishness.
Right. No, absolutely. Oh, it applies there for sure. The results are a little muddier on any given day, right? On any given day, but you find out as they become adults is when you really find out the things that mattered and the things that you did well. Like your scorecard becomes clear on Mother's Day, right? With what's written in cards, what they say about you to friends when you're not around, that's when you start to really understand. My daughter once said to me, I pulled a Kelli. And I went, oh, good Lord, what does that mean?
What does that mean today?
What does that mean? And she said, I stood up for myself, right? And so there was a moment where they'll say really priceless things that will give you some indication. Otherwise, you never give up. It changes all the time, but the score is not always as clean.
And the goalpost keeps moving.
And the goalpost moves all the time, as it does with work. Absolutely.
Do you happen to have a question for me?
I don't know that I do. Is this...
Excellent.
I don't know. Does this make any sense to you, all that we've talked about?
No, I think it does. Like, especially this last part. It's like, the DNA, the fiber of who you are, shows up at work, right, in your hyper-professional space, and in this other space of being a parent where that's also very critical to you. And then there's all the in-betweens. There's being a wife and being a daughter and being a friend and being a colleague and being a mentor and being a coach, and all of these things, it's other people that judge. All you've got is like the fire in your bones and the direction and your ethics and the things that you've learned over time, the dozens and dozens of times you've fallen on your face, and hopefully you learned enough of the lesson, and you've still got enough dirt on your face and elbows to say, okay, I've got it. I got some grit now. I learned how to get this and do this better. I see that running consistent through not just you, but other leaders, and although people couldn't see your face, when I put you in the Jack Welch box, it is what it is. And I think that it's seeing your face there, and then seeing your face when you said that the coach wouldn't let us quit. Like, your face had this thing, right? Oh, wouldn't let us quit. But it's you are who you are, and I think you're fantastic. I'm biased, but I'm also right.
And it's your podcast, so you get to be right.
So I get to be right.
You get to be whatever you'd like. Thank you. That's awesome.
Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate spending time with you. You're one of the best people.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it.